My name is Catherine Brooks. I'm 31 years old. And 8 days ago I walked up to a hospital front desk to see my grandfather one last time, and the nurse looked at her screen, looked back at me and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's a flag on this patient's file. You are not allowed in." Flagged. Like I was a criminal. Like I was someone to be afraid of. My dad put that flag there. He told the hospital staff that I had a history of threatening behavior, that I had made violent threats against family members in the past, that I was dangerous and could not be trusted around a sick, elderly man. Every single word of it was a complete lie, made up from nothing, filed on paper, designed to keep me out of that room. For 7 days, I stood in the hallway of the 3rd floor of Greystone Regional Medical Center on Millbrook Avenue in Cedar Falls, close enough to hear the machines beeping behind the door of room 316. My dad sat inside that room. His wife, Sandra, sat inside that room. I stood in that hallway like someone who didn't belong, while the man who actually raised me lay on the other side of a wall I couldn't get past. On the 8th day, a nurse I had never spoken to before slipped a folded note into my hand in the parking garage. 8 words and a room number, written in blue pen. What I found when I finally walked through that door, it wasn't just my grandfather waiting for me. It was a secret my dad had been draining my grandfather's life savings to keep hidden. Before I take you all the way back to the beginning, if this story is already hitting something in your chest right now, please like this video and hit subscribe. Only if it's speaking to you, though. And drop your city and your local time down in the comments. I read every single one. I love knowing where in the world y'all are when you hear this. Okay. Let me take you back to a rainy Wednesday morning, the day one phone call changed everything. I'm sitting at my desk at Bright Path Home Care on Ridgeview Road in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I work as a care coordinator. I help families figure out how to take care of elderly or sick loved ones at home. I deal with insurance paperwork, doctor visits, family disagreements, all of it. I've been doing this job for 6 years. I know the system. I know the rules. And I know how to keep my cool when everything around me is falling apart. My phone buzzes. It's a number I know by heart. Beverly Okafor, my grandfather's next-door neighbor for almost 25 years. "Catherine, baby. Your granddaddy fell in the driveway. The ambulance just left. You need to get here now." I grabbed my keys before Beverly even got to the end of that sentence. My supervisor, Renee, looked up from her desk, saw my face, and waved me toward the door without saying a word. 6 years she's known me. 6 years she's known exactly what Walter Brooks means to me. Let me tell you about my grandfather, because without knowing who this man is, none of what comes next will hit the way it should. My mom left when I was 9. Not died. Just left. 2 bags, a kiss on my forehead, and a car pulling out of the driveway that I never saw come back. My dad tried to hold things together for a while after that, but he had his own problems, bad money decisions, one business failure after another, always chasing the next big thing, and little by little I stopped being his priority. By the time I was 12, I was spending more nights at my grandfather's house on Birchwood Drive than I was at my dad's rental apartment on the other side of town. My grandfather, Walter Brooks, was 76 years old. He was a big man, wide hands, wide shoulders, the kind of guy who spent 30 years working as a licensed electrician and never once complained about a long day. He had this way of looking at you when you talked to him that made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. He came to every school play. He showed up to every graduation. When I got nervous before something big, I'd call him from a parking lot and he'd stay on the phone until I felt steady again. He was the one solid thing in my whole childhood. The one person who never walked away. I don't have a single good memory from growing up that doesn't have him somewhere in it. So when Beverly said ambulance, I barely felt the road for the whole 40-minute drive to Greystone Regional. I just drove. What I didn't know, not yet, was that my dad had gotten to that hospital 6 hours before me. And by the time I walked through those front doors on Millbrook Avenue, he'd already made sure I wasn't getting past the desk. The 3rd floor of Greystone Regional smells like hand sanitizer and old coffee. I walked up to the nurse's station in my work clothes, badge still around my neck, heart pounding like I'd just run a mile. Walter Brooks, room 316. I'm his granddaughter. The nurse at the desk, young, maybe mid-20s, kind eyes, clicked her mouse a couple of times. I watched her face do that thing. That small, uncomfortable shift that happens when someone has to deliver bad news that has nothing to do with them but they still feel terrible about. I'm sorry, ma'am. There's a restriction on this patient. Your name is not on the visitor list. Restricted by who? I can't share that information. The restriction was put in place by an immediate family member. I called my dad right there in the hallway. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, rehearsed. Catherine, the doctors say your grandfather needs total rest right now. His heart is working really hard. I'll call you when things get better. Dad, I just drove 40 minutes. Can I at least just see him for? Not today. He's sleeping. I don't want him disturbed. I stood in that hallway for another 15 minutes. Through the little window on the door of room 316, I could make out the edge of a hospital bed. A large hand resting on a white blanket. He was right there. I told myself maybe my dad was telling the truth. I drove home and told myself I'd try again tomorrow. He wasn't telling the truth. My dad had walked up to that same desk hours before me and told the staff exactly who was and wasn't allowed through that door. Day 2. I got there at 7:30 in the morning, thinking a different nurse on a different shift might give me a different answer. Same answer. The restriction is still active, ma'am. I'm sorry. I asked to speak to the charge nurse. She came out, listened to me for a few minutes, said she'd look into it, took my number. She never called back. Day 3. I called the hospital's main line trying to get any kind of update on my grandfather. Are you family? Yes. His granddaughter. Pause. I'm sorry. Medical updates can only go to the person listed as the care decision maker. Would you like to leave a message? Care decision maker. My dad had set that up 3 years ago after my grandfather's knee surgery. Pop had signed a bunch of papers putting my dad in charge of his medical and financial decisions while he was recovering. He was his son. He trusted him. Why wouldn't he? I called my dad again. 7 rings. Voicemail. 20 minutes later, I got a text from Sandra, my dad's wife, my stepmom. It said, "Your father has barely slept. He has been there every single day. The least you can do is give him some room instead of making this harder. Walter wouldn't want this mess." I read that text 4 times. Mess. I was standing outside a locked door trying to reach my dying grandfather, and I was the one making a mess. That night, I drove past Greystone Regional on my way home from the store. I looked up at the 3rd floor. Room 316's light was on, a small square of warm yellow against the gray evening. He was in there. He was awake. I sat in that parking lot off Millbrook Avenue for 18 minutes. I counted every one of them. Day 4 morning. I went to work at Bright Path, but I was only half there. I pulled aside Marcus Webb, a home care nurse I'd worked with for 4 years, one of those guys who knows more about heart conditions than most doctors I've met. "Marcus," I said quietly. "Serious heart failure. Older man. Already in the hospital. How much time, honestly?" He gave me the look he uses when the answer isn't good. "Depends on how his kidneys are holding up. The fluid keeps building and the body stops responding to the water pills." He paused. "Could be days. Maybe a couple of weeks if things go well." "It's my grandfather." He put a hand on my shoulder. "Catherine, go be with him." "I'm trying." I couldn't say the rest out loud without breaking down, and I don't break down at work. In this job, you have to be the steady one. The families who call us are already falling apart, they don't need me doing the same. But here's what kept running through my head every hour of those 7 days. Every day I can't get through that door could be the last day I have left with him. I have a little framed quote on my office wall. I bought it the first week I started this job. Says, "The most important thing you can give someone near the end is your presence." I put it there because I believed it. I still do. And I was being blocked from giving that to the one person who gave it to me first, every afternoon of my childhood when my world was crumbling and he was the only one who showed up. That evening I went home and stood at my closet, staring at the top shelf. Sitting up there was a small wooden box with a brass latch, the one my grandfather had put in my hands just 3 weeks earlier, the last time I'd visited him at his house on Birchwood Drive. He handed it to me at the front door and said, "Keep this safe for me, Catherine girl. Don't open it until I say so." I almost opened it that night. I held my thumb against the latch for a full minute. But he told me to wait, so I waited. Hey, if you've made it this far, I need you to stop for a second. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what would you have done on day 4? Would you have kept waiting? Or would you have pushed through that door no matter what? I actually read every comment. I want to know what you're thinking. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now because what's inside that wooden box is coming, and you do not want to miss it. Day 4 afternoon. I called the Patient Rights Office at Greystone Regional Medical Center. My name is Catherine Brooks. My grandfather, Walter Brooks, is in room 316. I've been kept from visiting him for 4 days. Patients have the legal right to choose who visits them. I'm asking for a formal review of the block on my name. I'll need to pull the file. Can I get your contact details? I gave her everything, name, phone, email, how I'm related. I kept my voice as steady as I keep it when I'm fighting an insurance company for a family who can't get their home care approved. Calm. Clear. On purpose. Our normal review takes 2 to 3 days, she said. Ma'am, my grandfather has serious heart failure. He may not have 3 days. I understand. I'll mark it urgent. I knew what urgent meant inside a short-staffed hospital. It meant someone would get to it eventually. But something I didn't expect happened. The patient rights worker pulled the file right away and called me back 15 minutes later. Miss Brooks, I want to be up front with you. The visitor block was put in place by Darren Brooks, listed as the patient's care decision-maker. He told us in writing that you have a history of threatening family members, that you made direct threats before, and that hospital staff could be at risk if you were allowed in. The phone felt cold against my face. That is not true. None of it. I have no record of any kind. No history of threats, no police reports, nothing. I've worked inside care facilities for 6 years without a single complaint against me. My father made all of that up. And there it was, the thing that stopped me cold in the middle of my own kitchen. My dad didn't file a complaint saying I was stressed or having a hard time. He told them I was dangerous. He put it in writing that I had a history of making threats, so that any nurse who pulled up my grandfather's file would see a red flag and turn me away at the door. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a made-up story with real consequences. Day 5 morning. I walked into Bright Path and Renee called me into her office before I even put my bag down. Catherine. Close the door. Hands flat on the desk. The look I'd seen her use 100 times on other people. Never on me. I got a call yesterday afternoon. A woman who took a while to give her name. She said she was a family member and she was worried about you, that you'd been acting erratically, that she was scared you might snap, and that she didn't think you should be working with elderly clients right now. My stomach hit the floor. Renee. That was Sandra. My stepmom. I figured it was something like that. The only reason I'm telling you this face-to-face instead of going straight to HR is because I know you. But Catherine, if she calls HR directly, if she puts it in writing, I have no choice. I have to open a review. 6 years, Renee. You know me. I do. That's why we're talking right now instead of something worse. I thanked her. I walked out to my car in the Bright Path parking lot on Ridgeview Road. And for the first time in 5 days, I sat there and cried. Not the quiet kind. Kind where your mouth opens and nothing comes out. I gave myself 2 minutes. Then I looked in the mirror, wiped my face with a napkin from the glove box, and took 3 slow breaths. She didn't just try to block me from my grandfather. She went after the one thing I built on my own, my job, my career, the only thing I ever did without needing a single thing from my dad's side of the family. That was the moment I stopped being patient. Hey, if someone in your life has ever called your job, your friends, your church, anyone, to put a bad word in about you, you know exactly what that feels like. It's not concern. It's control dressed up to look like concern. If that hit home for you right now, drop a fire in the comments. You are not alone. And please share this video. Someone you know needs to hear this today. Day 5, evening. I drove to my dad's house on Cedarwood Court. I hadn't been there in months. The driveway looked freshly paved. There was a big gray truck out front I didn't recognize, parked next to Sandra's SUV. The whole front yard looked like it had just been redone. New flower beds, fresh mulch, trimmed bushes. My dad's contracting business, Brooks Home and Build, hadn't had a real job in over a year from what I'd heard. But the house looked like new money had been spent on it. Sandra opened the door. She didn't look surprised to see me. She just stepped aside. My dad was in the living room in his chair, a baseball game on TV with the sound off. He didn't get up. Why am I not on the visitor list, Dad? The doctor said he needs rest. No stress. Which doctor? What's their name? You don't need to cross-examine me, Catherine. I've got this handled. You're listed as his care decision-maker. That doesn't mean you own him. He has the right to say who he wants to see. My dad's jaw went tight. I've seen that look my whole life. It's the one that says you're being a problem for no reason. You're showing me exactly why I was worried. Sandra appeared in the doorway with a glass of iced tea, leaning on the frame like she was watching TV. You're coming in here very aggressive right now, Catherine. This is the same kind of thing your father was talking about. I kept my voice flat and even. 2 days ago you said on the phone that Pop already signed the papers. What papers, Dad? He blinked. Fast. Small. I caught it. That's not your business. I drove home. Before I even got off Cedarwood Court, the front door opened. My dad stepped onto the porch with his arms crossed. Catherine. His voice dropped low. Controlled. If you go back to that hospital and make a scene, they'll call security. You understand what that does to someone in your line of work? You'll lose everything you built. There it was. He wasn't just keeping me out of a hospital room. He was pointing at my career like it was a bargaining chip. I've already filed a formal complaint with the Patient Rights Office, I said. In writing. Something changed in his face. A small tightening around the eyes, like a man who just realized someone moved a piece on the board when he wasn't looking. The system is on my side, Catherine. I'm his son. I'm listed on all the paperwork. There's no rank when it comes to who a patient wants to see, Dad. He stared at me. I looked past him at that fresh yard, the new truck, the repaved driveway. A business that hadn't closed a real deal in over a year. Something heavy settled in my gut, not grief exactly. Something colder. He went back inside. Porch light clicked off. I sat in my car and called Patricia Dunn, a retired legal assistant who volunteers at the Cedar Falls Community Legal Clinic doing elder care consultations. I'd sent families to her for years. She answered right away. We talked for about 10 minutes. One thing she said stayed with me for the rest of that night. If your grandfather wants to see you, that is a legal right. The only question is proving he wants to. Day 5, late evening. I did 3 things. First, I wrote a letter by hand. Real paper, real pen. I put it in a plain white envelope, wrote for Walter Brooks personally, room 316 across the front, and dropped it at the Greystone front desk at 10 at night. The letter said, Pop, Catherine. I have been coming every single day. They will not let me pass the front desk. If you want to see me, please tell your nurse. I am right here. I am not leaving. I didn't know for sure it would reach him. But I've been in this field long enough to know that when someone on staff decides a thing matters, they find a way. Second, I got my paperwork together. I called Dr. Sharon Keene, a therapist in Waterloo whose office I'd sent care clients to for years. I explained the situation. She agreed right away to write a letter saying she'd worked with me in a professional setting for 4 years, that I had no history of threatening behavior, no record of violence of any kind, and that nothing she'd ever seen in our professional relationship suggested I was any kind of risk to anyone. She sent it by email within the hour. I also texted Renee and asked for a written statement about my job record. She sent it before midnight. 2 letters. 2 pieces of paper pushing back against a lie. Third, I turned the wooden box over in my hands. And that's when I noticed something on the bottom. A strip of tape with my grandfather's blocky handwriting on it. Faye H 319-555-0147. I didn't know a Faye H. I had no idea why my grandfather would tape a phone number to the bottom of a box and hand it to me without explaining it. But Walter Brooks did not do random things. I put the number in my phone, went to bed, and slept maybe 2 hours. 5:52 in the morning, my phone rang. A local number I didn't have saved. Miss Brooks. The voice was quiet and careful, like someone who had decided to do something and was moving before they could second-guess it. My name is Teresa. I'm the overnight floor nurse on your grandfather's unit at Greystone. I can't be on long. I sat straight up in bed. Your grandfather got your letter last night. One of the nurses on my team brought it to him after the evening rounds. He read it. Then he asked for me. I pressed the phone to my ear. He told me, word for word, my son lied about her. My granddaughter didn't do anything wrong. Please help me get her here. A door closed softly on her end. Miss Brooks, I've been doing this job for 22 years. I've seen families fight over patients before. But your grandfather asked for you every single morning since he was admitted. Every morning. And every morning your father told him the same thing, that you were too tied up to visit, that you'd been having some trouble, that you'd come when things settled down. He told Pop I didn't want to come. Yes, ma'am. He did. My hand gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. There's more, Teresa said. Yesterday afternoon, a woman showed up to see your grandfather. Older, dressed sharp, carrying a briefcase. She had a younger man with her. They were in room 316 for nearly 2 hours. Your father came in while they were still there and tried to get security to remove her. Security came. She didn't leave. Who was she? A lawyer. Your grandfather changed his will yesterday, right there in his hospital bed. Your father was not in the room when it was signed. When he found out, She chose her words carefully. He was very upset. I couldn't find anything to say for a moment. Come this afternoon, Miss Brooks. Your grandfather needs you there for something. He asked for you by name. A pause. Room 316. He said he always left the light on for you. I called the number from the bottom of the box at 6:15 in the morning. 2 rings. This is Faye Hutchins. Teddy. Calm. The voice of someone who had spent a long career handling hard situations without flinching. Miss Hutchins, I'm Catherine Brooks. Walter Brooks is my grandfather. I know exactly who you are, sweetheart. I've been waiting for this call for almost a month. Faye Hutchins was 63 years old. She ran a small law office over on Elm Street in Cedar Falls that handled mostly wills, property transfers, and elder care planning. She and my grandfather had known each other for close to 20 years through St. Andrew's Baptist Church on Route 9, where Pop had volunteered his electrical skills for community repairs over the years. She had handled some paperwork for him twice before. They'd kept in touch. For weeks before any of this, before the fall, before the ambulance, my grandfather had called her. Walter called me on a Tuesday morning, Faye said. He told me he'd been looking at his bank statements and something felt off. He asked me to come over and help him go through the numbers. A pause. Catherine, what we found was not good. Over 4 years, someone had been taking money out of my grandfather's retirement savings and checking account, the money he'd put away over 30 years of getting up early, working long hours as an electrician, and saying no to things he didn't need. The withdrawals were spread out. $3,000 here, $1,000 there, $12,000 once. Always small enough not to trigger an automatic bank alert. Always signed off under the legal authority my dad had over Pop's finances. How much altogether? I said. $260,000. I sat down right there on the kitchen floor. Walter had saved close to $320,000 going into the surgery 3 years ago. He had roughly $60,000 left when he called me. He had no idea any of it was gone. He trusted your father completely. He stopped checking the statements because he thought there was nothing to worry about. I looked at the wooden box sitting on my counter. He put your number on the box as a backup, I said. That's right. He told me, and I wrote this down because I wanted to remember it exactly. If something happens to me before I can talk to her, the box will do the talking. Faye shifted from warm to businesslike. I'm going to Greystone this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I need your grandfather to finalize some legal papers, and he specifically asked that you be there. He also has something he wants to tell you in person. He was very firm about that. When you get in that room, let him go first. Don't rush him. I'll be there. Day 8. 12:40 in the afternoon. I parked in the Greystone Regional lot off Millbrook Avenue and sat in my car for about a minute with both hands flat on the steering wheel. Just breathing. Around me, regular Tuesday. A man in a baseball cap near the entrance. A volunteer wheeling someone toward a van. Normal day for everyone else. I had a folder on the passenger seat, Dr. Keene's letter, Renee's letter, and a copy of the federal rule on patient visitation rights. I didn't know if I'd need any of it. But the thing I tell every family I work with is, don't show up to a hard conversation without your paperwork. I was telling myself the same thing. The elevator opened on the 3rd floor. Same hallway I'd stood in for 7 days. Same hum of the lights above. Same smell. But today my hands weren't shaking. Because today I knew something I hadn't known the day before. My grandfather had been asking for me every single day. I walked to the nurse's station. A different woman this time, maybe mid-50s, silver hair, reading glasses, charge nurse on her badge. I'm here to see Walter Brooks. Room 316. She pulled up the screen. I saw the hesitation start. Ma'am, there's still a visitor block on. I know about the block. I filed a formal complaint with the Patient Rights Office 2 days ago. I have paperwork showing that the reason given for the block, that I have a history of threatening behavior, is completely false. I opened the folder and put both letters on her desk. This is a letter from a licensed therapist I've worked with professionally for 4 years. She confirms I have no history of threats or violence of any kind. This is a statement from my employer of 6 years saying my record is clean. She picked them up and started reading. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Catherine. I turned around. My dad was standing about 20 feet away near the vending machines. Dark polo shirt, jaw tight, a large envelope tucked under his arm. He had the look of someone who had been sitting there a while, waiting. I told you to stop coming here. And Pop has been asking for me every day. I turned back to the desk. So I'm here. My dad stepped closer and kept his voice just loud enough for the nurse's station to hear. I need to say something clearly. My daughter has a history of threatening people. She made threats against members of this family. She cannot be around my father right now, for his safety and for the safety of this staff. I have already given this nurse a letter from a licensed therapist saying I have no history of threats or violence. I also have a 6-year letter from my employer. Charge nurse looked at my dad, then at me, then back at the letters. She got someone to write those for her. That doesn't mean anything. Sir, they're on official letterhead with license numbers. I can verify both in about 3 minutes. My dad switched angles. I've watched enough hard conversations in this job to recognize when someone stops arguing the facts and starts arguing something else. She's not here because she cares about my father. She wants the house on Birchwood Drive. She wants whatever money he has left. That's what this is. Then Sandra came around from the elevator hall. She must have been downstairs waiting. She walked straight into the middle of it. My father-in-law made it very clear he does not feel comfortable with Catherine visiting. We're just doing what he asked. Ma'am. The charge nurse's voice was level. Done. I'm going to go ask Mr. Brooks myself what he wants. I just told you what. I need to hear it from him. Denise's face went red. My dad put a hand on her shoulder. She stepped away from it. You want to talk about what she wants? Sandra's voice went up just enough to carry down the hall. She hasn't been around for years. She shows up right now, right when there's a house, a savings account, money sitting there, and suddenly she's the devoted granddaughter? Come on. The hallway went quiet. I had not said a single word about money. Not to the hospital, not to the patient rights office, not in the letter I dropped off. I came to say goodbye to the man who raised me. That was the whole reason I was there. But Sandra just spelled out the exact contents of my grandfather's estate. The house, the savings account, the money, out loud in a hospital hallway in front of 6 people without anyone asking. I watched the charge nurse's expression shift. It was small, controlled, but her eyes went to my dad and stayed there one beat too long. She was putting something together. Sandra had married into this family 9 years ago. She was not Walter Brooks's blood. And she just listed off the details of an old man's finances in front of the nursing staff without blinking. That's not a worried wife. That's someone who knows exactly what's at stake. My dad saw the nurse's face change. He grabbed Sandra's arm. Let's go sit down. No, Darren, someone has to say what's really going on here. Sandra. Stop. Charge nurse raised one hand. I'm going in to talk to the patient. Nobody follows me. She looked at me. Wait here. She walked to room 316, pushed through the door and let it close behind her. My dad. Sandra. Me. 2 nurses at the station. An older woman in a wheelchair by the elevator who had stopped pretending she wasn't watching every second of this. 40 seconds. A minute. A minute and a half. The lights above us hummed. Then the door opened. The charge nurse stepped into the hallway and looked straight at me. Mr. Brooks is alert and clear-headed. He is asking to see his granddaughter. Right now. My dad stepped forward. He's on heart medication. He's not thinking straight. Mr. Brooks. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Dr. Okafor did a full mental clarity check on your father this morning. He is completely clear-headed and able to make his own choices, including who he lets in his room. That assessment is in his chart. Your father has the right to choose his own visitors. I will not be having this conversation again. My dad's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Sandra. She looked at the floor. I stepped forward. My dad's hand shot out and grabbed my elbow. Squeezed. Let go. 1 second. 2. Charge nurse was watching. Both nurses at the station were watching. The woman in the wheelchair was watching. He let go. I walked to room 316. Put my hand on the door. Pushed it open. Stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. The room was smaller than I expected. One bed, one window looking out over the Millbrook Avenue parking lot and the rooftops of Cedar Falls beyond it. A heart monitor keeping its slow, steady count. Late afternoon light coming in through the blinds, laying thin stripes of gold across the floor. My grandfather was propped up in the bed at an angle, a thin oxygen tube running across his face. His hair was longer and whiter than I'd ever seen it. He'd lost weight. He looked smaller than 3 weeks ago. But his eyes, those dark, steady, no-nonsense eyes, were open and locked on the door the second it opened. He was not alone. Faye Hutchins was there in the chair to his left, her briefcase open on the bedside table. Next to her stood a younger man with a notepad, her assistant from the office on Elm Street. And on the other side of the bed, in a chair she'd pulled close, sat Teresa, still in her scrubs even though her overnight shift had ended hours ago. She'd stayed. She looked at me and gave a small, single nod. My grandfather lifted his hand off the blanket and reached toward me. "There you are, Catherine girl." I crossed the room and took his hand in both of mine. It was lighter than I remembered. But his grip was there. "I came every day, Pop." "I know." His voice was quieter than usual, a little rough from the oxygen. But steady. "They told me you didn't want to come. Said you were wrapped up in your own problems. Said you'd get here when you could." He tightened his grip on my hand. "I almost believed it once. But I know you. You'd crawl through broken glass to get to me." The monitor kept its count behind him. "Teresa brought me your letter last night. She read it out loud when my eyes were giving me trouble." He looked past me at her. "This one right here." She heard me crying after the lights went down and she said, "Mr. Brooks, if your granddaughter has been coming every day, I'm going to help her reach you." And she did. I looked at Teresa. She gave me that same quiet nod. Faye pulled a second chair over. I sat without letting go of Pop's hand. "Catherine." His thumb moved slowly across my knuckles, the same thing he used to do when I was a little kid and he was about to say something real. "I'm sorry you had to stand in that hallway as long as you did. I needed things ready before you walked in. If you'd come before the paperwork was done, your daddy would have found a way to shut it down." "Pop, I don't care about any papers. I just wanted to see you." "I know that. That's why you're the one I trust." He took a careful breath. The oxygen hissed faintly. "But there's something I need to say to your face before we finish anything else. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Faye and her assistant stepped back toward the window to give us some room. Teresa stayed, quiet but there. 3 years ago," Pop started, "after my knee surgery, I put your dad in charge of my money. I couldn't drive. Couldn't get to the bank. Couldn't manage anything on my own from a hospital bed. He was my son." His voice was slow and deliberate, like he was picking each word by hand. I didn't think twice. The monitor kept its steady beat. Things seemed fine for a while. The bills got paid. I got my checks when I needed them. I stopped looking at my bank statements because I figured there was nothing to look at. That was my mistake. Not trusting him, stopping checking. Then he told me everything. The uneasy feeling that made him start pulling out old statements. The call to Faye. Faye coming over to his house on Birchwood Drive with a printed spreadsheet and sitting across from him at his own kitchen table with that look on her face. 30 years of electrical work. Getting up before sunrise. Saying no to things he didn't need. Putting money away like his father taught him. $320,000 built slowly and carefully over a lifetime. Gone. $260,000 of it, pulled out in small pieces over 4 years, signed off with the legal authority my dad had over his accounts. Your dad used it to keep that business from going under. Contracts that fell apart, tools bought on credit, workers who had to be paid even when jobs dried up. And Sandra. He stopped. Cleared his throat. Sandra got used to spending money that wasn't hers. They'd come for dinner on Sundays and talk about how things were picking up, how the next quarter was going to turn it all around. And I'd just nod and pass the cornbread. A long pause. The oxygen hissed quietly. I had $320,000, Catherine. By the time Faye showed me those numbers, I had $60,000 left. 30 years of work. He didn't cry. Men like him don't cry about money. The silence that came instead was heavier than tears. I don't need your dad in jail. He's still my boy. But I won't let him take what I have left. And I won't let him take that house on Birchwood. He looked straight at me. The house. What's left in the bank? Everything I have. I'm leaving it to you. Not because you asked. 'Cause you never would. That's exactly why. Faye came back to the bedside with her papers. 2 pages. Plain, clear language. She read every part out loud. The house at 14 Birchwood Drive, a 3-bedroom with a half-acre yard assessed at $230,000, goes to me. The remaining savings go to me. A gift to St. Andrew's Baptist Church on Route 9. Darren Brooks is named nowhere in the document. She also had the paper revoking my dad's authority over Pop's finances, effective immediately. He had no more legal control over Walter Brooks's accounts. Faye would manage things until a permanent arrangement was in place. Pop picked up the pen. His hand moved slowly, but his grip was sure. He signed 3 times, the will, the financial authority revocation, and a third paper that Dr. Okafor had prepared alongside the mental clarity test he'd run that morning, confirming Pop knew exactly what he was signing. Faye signed. Her assistant signed. Teresa stepped forward and signed as the second witness. A notary stamp came down twice. 2 firm, clean sounds in a quiet room. Everything is signed, witnessed, and official, Faye said. 1 copy went into her briefcase. 1 went to Teresa to put in the patient file. A third would go to the county clerk's office before the end of the day. My grandfather set the pen down on the blanket and let out a long breath. Not tired. Finished. All right, he said quietly. Go tell your daddy he can have that envelope he's been holding. I stepped out into the hallway. My dad was still there, leaning against the wall across from room 316 like a man waiting for a verdict. He saw Faye's briefcase. He saw Teresa walking toward the nurse's station with papers. He looked at my face. He didn't understand what he was signing. He's on medication, he's... Walter? Faye stopped. She'd known my dad since he was in high school. Dr. Okafor ran a full clarity check on your father this morning. He is completely aware of what he did. He started this process 4 weeks ago from his own house before he was ever in this building. 2 witnesses. Notarized. This will hold. I'll fight it in court. If you go to court, you'll have to explain $260,000 taken from your father's accounts over 4 years, under your name with your signature. That is already part of the record. Silence. My dad looked at the envelope in his hand, the old will, the one he'd been carrying around like a weapon. He looked at Faye. At me. At the closed door of room 316. Sandra appeared at the far end of the hall. She read his face and walked quickly to him, touched his arm. He let her steer him toward the elevator. He looked back once. And in that one look, just for half a second, I saw through all of it. The anger, the confidence, the years of telling himself he was the responsible one, the good son who stepped up. I saw a 54-year-old man who had gotten in too deep and never found a way back out. A man who loved his father in some real but broken way, but loved avoiding consequences more. A man who was realizing, in a hospital hallway with 6 people watching, that the story he'd been telling about himself had just come apart. He didn't say anything. The elevator doors closed. I stood there for a full minute. Just the hum of the lights. Then I walked back into room 316 and sat down next to my grandfather. He reached for my hand without opening his eyes. Is he gone? He's gone, Pop. A long, slow breath. Good. Stay with me. I stayed. My grandfather passed 9 days later, on a Thursday morning just before the sun came up. The light was starting to come through the blinds in room 316, the same thin gold light it always had in the early morning. Teresa was on shift. I was in the chair next to him with his hand in mine. The monitor went from its rhythm to a long, flat tone. And then it was over. He didn't suffer at the end. The night before, he squeezed my hand and said, "Catherine, girl, I'm tired, but I'm okay now." He gave me a real smile, the kind that goes all the way to the eyes even when the body is almost done. Closed his eyes. By morning, he was gone. But I was there. Through 7 days of being kept out, I was there. I got 8 full days sitting with him, bringing him iced tea from the cafeteria because it was close enough to what he liked at home, reading the sports pages out loud because his eyes were tired, holding his hand while he slept, telling him I'd fix up the vegetable garden in the backyard when spring came. He told me not to plant the tomatoes in the shade again. He was right. I always put them in the wrong spot. That's the part that matters. That I was there. After everything settled down, Faye took the full financial records, 4 years of withdrawals, my dad's signatures on every single one, to the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services Elder Protection Unit and to the State Attorney General's office. The investigation took about 3 months. My dad wasn't arrested, but he was given a choice: pay back $260,000 through a civil agreement or face criminal charges under Iowa's elder financial exploitation law. His lawyer pushed for the civil route. Problem was my dad didn't have $260,000. Brooks' home and build had been losing money for years. 2 big jobs had fallen apart. A rental property he owned on the east side had building code problems he'd been ignoring for over a year. He had to sell everything. His truck, his equipment, the rental property, whatever was left after the debts. Sandra filed for divorce 6 weeks after the repayment deal was signed. Her lawyer moved fast. She wanted to be out before all the financial details went fully public. She took her car and her personal things. She didn't leave because she was horrified by what my dad had done to his own father. She left because the money that paid for the new driveway and the fresh yard and her SUV was all gone now. When the account ran dry, the marriage ran dry with it. Some people's loyalty is just math. My dad lives in a small rental on the east side of Cedar Falls now. I know because Cedar Falls is not a big city. Word gets around, through church bulletins, through the coffee shop on Main, through the looks people give you at the grocery store on Vine Street. Faye is a deacon at St. Andrew's Baptist on Route 9. Teresa lives 2 blocks from the hospital. Beverly Okafor has lived on Birchwood Drive for 25 years. When a community of this size learns that the man who spent years talking about taking care of his sick father was quietly emptying that father's bank account, it doesn't need a news story. It just knows. And the knowing shows up in little ways: shorter conversations, calls that don't get returned, chairs at the Rotary lunch that stay empty. Let me tell you about Teresa because she deserves to be in this story. After everything was over, my dad filed a complaint against her with the hospital, saying she had overstepped, shared patient information she shouldn't have, and helped influence a sick old man into changing his will. Greystone Regional investigated. Took 3 weeks. They looked at everything. The phone call, the note, the letter delivery, her role as a witness when the will was signed. Their finding was clear. Teresa had not broken any privacy rules. She had not shared medical information. She had helped a patient reach a family member the patient had been asking to see every single day, a wish that had been written into the nursing notes repeatedly. She had witnessed a legal document because the patient asked her to, which hospital rules allow for staff who aren't directly treating the patient. Complaint was thrown out. No punishment. No mark on her file. I wrote a long letter to the head of nursing at Greystone Regional telling them exactly what Teresa had done and what it meant. I hope it landed somewhere that mattered. About 3 weeks after the funeral, I ran into her at the Cedar Falls Market on Vine Street. She was in the produce section in regular clothes, off shift, holding a bag of oranges. She looked up and smiled, not the careful professional smile. The real one. "How are you doing, hon?" "Getting there." I moved into his house. Good. He would have wanted that. I thanked her for everything she'd done, the call, the note, the risk. She waved me off. "Your grandfather asked for you." That was enough for me. She put the oranges in her basket and headed to checkout. 22 years on the job, and she made the most important thing look like the simplest thing. I moved into the house on Birchwood Drive 6 weeks after the funeral. I didn't sell it. I didn't rent it out. I packed up my apartment on South Park Lane in 3 carloads and brought everything to Birchwood. My coffee maker is on his counter now. My books sit beside his old library books and the worn Bible his mother gave him back in the 1970s that he kept on the kitchen table for decades. My sneakers are on the rug he braided himself years ago when he was still doing that kind of handiwork. The house was built in 1965. It's been fixed up piece by piece over the years, but never in a rush. Kitchen still has the same tile counters he put in around 2000 and never felt the need to change. The back porch still squeaks on the second step. The bedroom I slept in as a kid still has the green striped wallpaper I picked out when I was 11. He let me choose it and said that room was mine for as long as I needed it. I haven't changed it. The backyard needed real attention. 3 months of no one caring for it had let everything get out of hand. I spent a full Saturday outside on my knees in the dirt, cleaning it up and replanting the way he taught me. Tomatoes away from the shady corner this time. Basil near the back door so it's easy to grab while cooking. My hands were sore for days after. The good kind of sore. And the wooden box sits on the kitchen windowsill now, lid open. Underneath the strip of tape with phase number on it, there's a photograph inside, black and white, folded once down the middle. Me at age 9, sitting on this exact front porch with Pop's arm around me. We're watching fireflies come up out of the yard. On the back, in his blocky printing, "I will always leave the light on for you." He wrote that 22 years before I stood in a hospital hallway locked out by his own son. And from a hospital bed, with a heart that was giving out, he kept that promise anyway. People ask me whether I've completely cut off my dad. The answer is no. But it's not yes either. I made one phone call after everything was wrapped up. Short. Calm. "Dad, I don't hate you. I want to be clear about that. But I can't trust you right now. Maybe not for a long time. You made up a story about me threatening people, filed it with a hospital, to keep me away from your own father while he was dying. You took his money while he thought you were protecting it. And when he tried to fix it, you tried to stop him. I had reasons, Catherine. Everybody has reasons. Reasons don't fix what you broke." Quiet. Just his breathing. "If you ever decide to own what you did, actually own it, not just explain it, I'll pick up the phone. Till then, I need space. That's not me punishing you. That's just me being honest." He said, "Fine." That was it. He hasn't called since. I've left my number the same. The door is open on my end. But I can't walk through it for him. That's his walk to take. I used a small part of the money Pop left me to set up the Walter Brooks Fund at the Cedar Falls Community Foundation. Pays for free legal consultations for older residents in Lynn County who need someone to look over their financial paperwork or check on who has control of their accounts before something goes wrong. Faye runs the legal side. Patricia Dunn from the Community Legal Clinic on Oak Street has joined the board. It won't undo what happened to my grandfather. But if it helps one other family catch this kind of thing before it gets this far, that's what he would have wanted. He spent 30 years making sure other people's homes were safe. This is my version of that. Last Saturday, I repainted the front porch. Same warm gray Pop had picked years ago. Same brand, same finish. Took most of the day. Two neighbors who'd known Pop for decades stopped to talk while I worked. My shoulders were stiff the next morning. Paint in my hair. Felt right. The whole day felt exactly right. I'm telling you this story not to make you hate my dad. He's a man who got in over his head and kept going deeper instead of turning around. That doesn't make what he did okay. Not even close. Just means life is messier than clean villains and clean heroes, and the truth usually lives somewhere in the messy middle. I'm telling you this because I want you to know something that actually matters. If someone in your life is using a system to keep you from the people you love, a hospital policy, a piece of paper, a lie, a threat, that same system has tools you can use to fight back. Carefully. Professionally. Without losing who you are in the middle of it. I didn't yell in that hallway. I didn't break anything down. I didn't put my dad's name on the internet. I brought paperwork. I asked the right questions. I found the right people. And when the moment came to walk through that door, I walked through it with my head up and my hands still. My grandfather taught me that, not in words but in the way he showed up every single day of my childhood. He was a man who kept important things in wooden boxes and trusted the right person would find them when the time was right. A man who rewrote his will from a hospital bed, not out of anger but because he finally saw the truth clearly and had just enough time left to act on it. If you are standing outside a door right now, a real door or the kind that's just a feeling that someone else locked to keep you out, I want you to hear this. That door is not theirs to own. It belongs to the person on the other side of it. And if that person wants you there, no lock holds forever. You just have to keep showing up. Even when you're told to stop. Even when it costs you something. Especially then. My grandfather left the light on for me. From a hospital bed on Millbrook Avenue with everything stacked against it, he left the light on. The least I can do is leave one on for you. That is my story. If something in it hit you deep, if it made you think of someone you love or gave you the push to do something you've been putting off or just helped you feel less alone in something you're carrying right now, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done on day 5. Would you have kept waiting or would you have pushed through no matter what? And tell me your city and your local time. I genuinely read every single comment, and knowing where in the world y'all are when you hear this means more than I can say. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone. Not for the views, share it because there is somebody in your life right now standing outside a locked door, feeling like they're going crazy and they need to know they have more power than they think. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. The next story I'm getting ready to share is even harder to talk about, and I think it's going to land just as close to home. And hold on to this, your place in someone's life is not something anyone else gets to take away. Not a form. Not a lie. Not a locked hospital door. Nobody gets to take that from you.